It's been 9 years since Sony updated the RX10. Was it worth the wait? Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a real-world preview of the Sony RX10 Mark V. Now, it's been 9 years since the RX10 Mark IV was released. Now, Sony calls this a bridge camera. Now, I put bridge in quotes like this because you are paying a hefty toll to cross that damn bridge if you decide to go with this camera. We'll get to the pricing at the very end of this video. You can think of this as an all-in-one mega zoom point and shoot. It's not as small as an RX100, but it is a mega zoom point and shoot. It does quite a lot. Now, the Mark IV was in need of an update because it had the older menus, an older focusing system, the older processors, and of course, an older battery. A lot of people said that the battery in the older camera was absolute garbage. Have those things been updated? The answer to that is yes, and we're gonna go into more detail in just a minute, but let me tell you what I shot. Now, I took this thing out into the real world, of course, took it to a baseball game to take photos, but I also took it out to Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. I was actually there on July 3rd. Yep. I also went in to see the Liberty Bell. It didn't leave with any more cracks than were already there when I went in there. And I also ended up photographing a family. It turns out that one of my readers stopped me and was like, "I love your videos." I was like, "Can I do a family portrait?" They're like, "Sure." What makes this a preview video and not a review video in my mind is I can't open the RAW files just yet, but I did shoot in compressed RAW. We'll talk more about why compressed RAW later in this video, but I also chose to shoot HEIF instead of JPEG because you get those 10-bit files instead of 8, and I rather have more bits than less bits. Now let's move on to the outside of the body and address the elephant in the room. Elephant, get out of the room! The Mark V has the same lens and same sensor as the Mark III, and that was introduced over 10 years ago. That means you have the same 24 to 600 millimeter f2.4 to f4 with a 1-inch stacked 20 megapixel sensor that left me a little worried. Because when I hear that it has the same tech as over 10 years ago, I'm like, well, a lot has changed in 10 years. Is this image quality going to suck? And we're gonna find out at the end of this video. Now that we sent the elephant packing, what's changed on the outside? Well, it mimics the look of an alpha camera, but it doesn't feel like an alpha camera. When I put this in my hands, I was like, it may look like an alpha camera, but it certainly doesn't feel as good as an alpha camera in your hands. And not just the ergonomics, but it feels like it's made a little more cheaply when you hold on to it. That's not to say that it doesn't have a little bit of heft to it, but from someone who uses alpha cameras all the time, to switch to this or to feel this, you definitely notice a slight difference. But if you know alpha cameras, then this camera is going to be very familiar, at least in terms of dials and button placements. It's not going to be exactly the same, but all the muscle memory that you have built up will translate right to this camera. Starting with the top, it looks completely different than its predecessor. You no longer have the LCD screen. The mode dial is now up top with the asterisk dial, which was introduced in the A7R6. It pretty much has the same button layout that you would find on most alpha cameras. You have the custom buttons, you have exposure comp dial, and you now finally have a joystick on the back. The Mark V has a much bigger 3.68 million dot EVF, which honestly worked extremely well. The older one, much smaller, not as high of a resolution, and I didn't feel like I was lacking anything when using this 3.68 million dot EVF. It was bright, it was clear, it worked. Also, when you go vertical, it does rotate just like the modern alpha cameras. It also has a higher res 1.6 million dot 3-inch LCD touchscreen that only tilts. It does not do the Flappy Bird or the flip around and rotate option, which for some, they may not be happy with it, but I'm at least happy having the flip out thing so I can put it down on the ground to get lower pictures. It does have a beefier grip, which I need for these massive mittens right here, but the reason it has a beefier grip is because it takes a Z battery. We heard that the older camera was really bad when it came to battery life, and I can tell you it has battery for days with the Z battery. I never felt like I was gonna run out of battery when I was outside shooting baseball or outside at Independence Hall or around the Liberty Bell. It was just juiced up and good to go. Something that this camera lacks are the normal 3 control dials for exposure. There's the back dial, there's the spinny dial, but there's no front dial. And that became a problem when I was trying to figure out how to change my aperture. You cannot touch the screen to change the aperture, and you can't find a dial that digitally changes the aperture without physically having to turn a ring. There was no other way to change it that I could find. You have the same inputs and outputs on the side of the camera, but now you do have a USB-C port that is capable of 10 gigabit transfer speeds as well as 4K live streaming. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by B&H and their PayBoo credit card, where you pay the tax and B&H pays you back instantly. Now there's 2 ways you can save. One, where you pay the tax and B&H pays you back instantly. To check your eligibility for Save the Tax benefits, visit bhphoto.com/payboo. Or 2, you can get 6 to 12 months special financing on minimum purchases of $199 for 6 months or $599 for 12 months. Now, I personally choose to save the tax, but both options are great options to have. To learn more, visit bhphoto.com/payboo. Now, I save tax on everything I order when I use my PayBoo credit card from B&H, from cameras to lenses and computers to hard drives, TVs, and even film for my 4x5 camera. Whether you spend $10 or $10,000, those savings add up.
Low on cash, but still need to get your boo? Don't worry.
For more information and to apply for your PayBoo card, head on over to the link on the screen or down below in the description. And remember to always charge responsibly. Now, going back to the lens, you have a 25-time optical zoom. Now, here's what 24 looks like, and here's what 600 looks like. It's pretty crazy to be behind people in the stands and get a nice wide-angle shot of them, and then bang into 600 on the picture. That is pretty impressive. Another example is my eye was caught by a plane flying overhead, and I'm like, wow, you have a massive, massive reach from 24 all the way to 600. It's gonna give you everything that you ever wanted in a lens. Is it gonna be the greatest thing since sliced bread? We're gonna find out a little later, but it is a massive zoom for the people who want one thing that can do it all. When it comes to zooming, now this is the same that you found in the older camera, but if you never knew of that older camera, well, it has step zooming, or you can zoom with the rocker. Now, step zooming means you can turn the zoom ring on the lens. Now, it's all digital, and it will step from like 35 to 50 to 85 just in one little jump. So you can control the zooming there, or you could use the rocker. So a rocker is just like a camcorder, or somebody would just be used to. You go this way, you zoom in. You go that way, it zooms out. It's pretty easy and it's very quick. The one thing I did find is that turning the camera off might be a little slow for it to shut down because it has to do its shutdown and then the lens has to retract and do its thing. And sometimes when you turn it on, it's not as fast as some of the other cameras on the market, but it's not super slow. Just know it does take a second or two to power on to get ready to shoot. Moving on to the inside of the camera where everything's exactly the same. It's not exactly the same, but this part is, because it has the same 1-inch 20 megapixel stacked sensor, which is the same that you had in the Mark III and the Mark IV, and also the same sensor you find in the RX100, which is a sweet little point and shoot that is probably due for an update, but that is a fun little camera. Now, because it is a 1-inch sensor in 35mm terms, it gives you a 2.7 time crop factor. This is more like a 6.3 to f11 an equivalent. Now, not when it comes to the light gathering or the light transmission. We're just talking about the perceived difference between the background blur. Meaning, if I took a 600 f4 Sony and shot it next to this 600 millimeter, technically at f4, the backgrounds are gonna look completely different. You don't get the same results. So basically, things in the background you're going to see. Now, I understand it can be more nuanced than just saying that it's the equivalent of 6:3 to 11, but just understand that your background isn't going to be completely obliterated like it would if you put on there a super expensive lens or you used a camera that could take a more high-end lens. This isn't a deal breaker for most of the people buying this camera. Most people just know they're getting better results than what a cell phone would give them, and they're perfectly fine with that, and that is totally okay. When I was going over the specs for this camera and I was like, wait, this is a stacked sensor and that's from 10 years ago? That was pretty impressive to have a stacked sensor 10 years ago, but do you get a lot of rolling shutter when it comes to shooting fast-moving subjects, like a batter swinging the bat or the ball being pitched? And there is a slight bowing of the ball, but I didn't really see much bowing of the bat. Now keep in mind that a 1-inch sensor is much smaller than the volume that a full-frame sensor takes up. So if you have a slower full-frame sensor, you're gonna have more issues than with this 1-inch sensor. So the images look perfectly fine, and I think anything you're gonna shoot, except for maybe the pitcher whose fingers look like they're warping pretty heavily right here, I think most things, 99% of the time, are gonna be perfectly fine and you won't notice issues. One of the downsides to a smaller sensor is you generally don't have great high ISO capability or great images in low light. And that is gonna hold true in this camera. Now, yeah, you have a max ISO of 12,800, but I can tell you that's gonna be pretty horrendous. Now, I was shooting most of my baseball photos at 800 to 1,000, and you can already see some of the noise issues that would show up. Does it take away from the image? No, but the higher the ISO, the less quality you're gonna get out of your images. And also, if you're someone who's going to end up cropping more on top of your 600 millimeter, if it's high ISO, you're going to enlarge those imperfections and make them look even larger. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that this is a charity I Shoot Raw t-shirt with all profits going to help bring water to my friend George, his family, and his community in Kenya. Now, George has been our safari guide for the last 3 years, and through our discussions, I found out his wife needs to walk 4 miles just to get clean water. Now, we take for granted the fact that we have fresh, clean water literally on tap. Well, we can help change the fact that they don't have water. All profits from the sale of this shirt go directly to bringing water to George, his family, and his community. On top of that, I'm offering 100 prints for sale and an option to make a straight donation. Now, we're already making a difference with well over 300 shirts pre-ordered. Head on over to store.froknosphoto.com to grab a shirt or two, a print, or make a donation. Thank you in advance for your support. Now, back to the video. Now let's move on to the video features. You might have noticed that the quality shifted quite a bit because we went from using the Canon R5, which is full frame, to this RX10 V, which has a 1-inch sensor, but we just wanted to show you what the quality is you could get out of it. Now, the big update here for video is that it now shoots 10-bit 422 4K up to 60p, which is oversampled from 5.4K with full pixel readout. Now, personally, I originally wanted to just shoot this camera in auto when it came to video because I think that's how a lot of people are going to end up using it. But Steven told me that the quality is going to be so much better if we take full control of the camera's full capabilities, so that's how I ended up shooting it. And when I was out at Independence Hall, it definitely made a difference. So that's why I ended up shooting it in full manual. Obviously, with a 1-inch sensor, you get much greater depth. That's why you can see everything on this set. You normally don't get to see it this clear or in focus because Full frame sensors give you a different depth of field. When it comes to slow motion, you now have 4K up to 120p with a big crop on top of a crop. You do have the slow and quick menu now for burned in slow motion video. This replaces the old high frame rate video mode where they gave you something like 960p. That's not a big loss, NGL, because it looked like junk anyway. You now no longer have a 30-minute record limit, so you can just set it and forget it, and as long as you have memory and as long as you have battery, you can keep recording. In terms of stabilization, it's fine. It's nothing to write home about, but it's also not gonna be terrible. You do have the new active stabilization mode. Now remember, that's gonna crop in a little bit more, which it's already cropped on top of a crop depending on how you're shooting. So just know you can get active stabilization. It's just gonna eat away into your frame. I should also mention that it's only lens-based stabilization. There is no IBIS inside of this body. Now, one of the reasons that I shot in manual is because you now have S-Log3 with a base ISO of 1000. That's how we're shooting here right now and how I shot out there in the real world. And I think everything looked fairly good, fairly decent. Of course, a full frame sensor is going to look better, but I still look at this as a video camera replacement, a cell phone replacement, and you're gonna get basically camcorder style video, which is how all the kids like to shoot today anyway. Enough talking about the video, here's a quick montage of video I captured.
Illegal search and seizure. I hate cornering too. That's why we are fighting. Added a few more and behold, the Sons of Liberty flag.
Now that we got the video specs out of the way, let's wrap this up, but let's switch back to the other camera. We now know that the sensor is the same and the lens is the same, but they did make some changes under the hood. You now have a Bionz XR processor with an AI chip, but keep in mind, it's not the XR2 processor, but for most people, it doesn't really matter. It gets the latest menus. You now have the swipe to touchscreen menus that can show up. It has upgraded autofocus with real-time tracking. You have subject tracking, which means you've got your people, your animals, your planes, and all of the other bells and whistles that it comes with that the regular alpha cameras have, but the older models of this did not have. So how is the autofocus? It's hit or miss, right? It's better than what you would expect from the older camera, but it still does back focus on occasion. But I think most people are gonna throw this into full-on auto, and it's gonna do a very good job. You also have a lot of leeway with f6.3 to f11 equivalent, so just know there is a little extra wiggle room right there where you might be out, but it still looks good enough to use. For the most part, I was happy with the results that I got. It did track, it did lock on, but there were times where I needed to re-engage, take my finger off the button, re-engage a subject because it was locked on the wrong thing. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you FROPAC 4 in action on this photo right here, and it looks absolutely incredible, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn. We've got C41, Copper Tone, DeLorean, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, and Wet Hot American Summer. But my all-time favorite from FROPAC 1, with one click of a button here, we've got Skittles, and it goes boom. But new and exclusive to FROPAC 4, we've got 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets called Face Enhance, Full Body Skin Enhance, Eye Only Enhance, and Background Blur. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, or also edit on the go in Lightroom Mobile, because these presets work on JPEGs and RAW on the go, We created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/fropack4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or, if you want to save even more, you can get the Grand Slam bundle that includes FroPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course, Skittles is included. Now, let's get back to the video. The prior model could do 24 frames per second with the electronic shutter, and now you're able to squeeze out 30 frames per second. They did add a UHS-2 SD card slot, which should come in handy now that you're shooting much faster frame rates, because 30 frames is going to chew up more data, and it's nice to have a faster SD card. They did add the option for speed boost. Now, this doesn't allow you to go past 30 frames per second, but where it comes in handy for me is I like to shoot at maybe 15 frames per second if something isn't really happening on the field that needs to be captured at 30 frames per second. But if something is about to happen, I program the AF on button to go into speed boost to go right into 30 frames per second. But one of the things that Sony did not put into this camera, which leaves me scratching my head a little, especially knowing that this is really for birders or for people that want to capture wildlife, is where's pre-capture? If you could do all this other, if you could do 30 frames per second, why can't we do pre-capture? Because that would come in handy for those birders. That's one feature that I think they missed out on putting into this camera. Now, did they do that to maybe force people to step up and buy something else? I don't know. Maybe there's a technical limitation inside of this camera. I'm not sure, but I really would have liked to have seen pre-capture. All the photos I took were with the electronic shutter. Now, one of the reasons it was only with the electronic shutter is the max shutter speed with the mechanical shutter is 1/1000th of a second. And the baseball photos I was taking were at 1/1600th of a second. Now, with the electronic shutter, you can max out at 1/16,000th of a second, so you do have a lot of leeway, and that's what makes this primarily an electronic shutter camera only. On top of that, the only way you can get 30 frames per second is with the electronic shutter, because you should get right around 10 frames per second with the mechanical. But there is one benefit to shooting with mechanical, is you can get a higher quality RAW file. With electronic mode, you are only getting a compressed RAW file. Now, normally, I wouldn't shoot a compressed RAW file, but I'd rather have a RAW file than a JPEG file, even if the RAW file is compressed. But don't forget, all the images you're seeing are from edited HEIF files, because we can't open the RAW files just yet. Let me jump in here real quick and say, do you struggle getting sharp, crisp, clear images in low light situations like these? Well, if you said yes, I have a free guide for you. Just head on over to froknowsphoto.com and look for this orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm gonna send you that guide for free. Let's wrap this up. Who is this camera for? I like to call it the AARP camera. The camera for 50-year-old people and older. The type of people that don't mind carrying around something bigger than a cell phone because they're used to bigger cameras from way back in the day, but also have disposable income. I say that because this is an over $2,000 camera. And I think that people who are retired or who are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, who are looking for a camera like this that gives them all the reach to get those whales and get those birds and get the Sistine Chapel and everywhere they're going in their waning years, this is the camera for them. This isn't, in my opinion, the camera for someone who owns an alpha camera. You own an A7 IV or an A7 R6 and you're like, I don't want to lug that around. Well, I don't think you should be dumbing it down to spend over $2,000 on a mega point and shoot camera. I still think you should take your real camera, put a lens on it, and go travel. It's not that much bigger or heavier. As I said, this isn't the camera for me. But when I took it out into the world and I got familiar with how to manually control things, I was able to get what I think are very good results. They don't match what I normally would shoot, but for the people that are looking for something better than a cell phone, they want to capture their family, because again, it's not just for the AARP group. It could be the soccer mom, the soccer dad, the people with a growing family who just want to reach out and get better pictures than what their cell phone can get. This could be an option. a very expensive option. And I should say that if you are thinking about making photography an actual thing and not just setting it on auto, which is perfectly fine with this camera, and just going out and shooting, but if you want to take photography and take it more seriously, well then maybe you should consider a Sony a7C2, which is right around $2,000. Now, yes, you need to add lenses and you need to learn a little bit more, but the quality you're gonna get out of that camera is gonna be far superior to this. But the reach and the ability to travel with one camera that goes from 24 to 600, you just can't do that. I should also add that Nikon has something similar in the P1100. The problem with the Nikon one is it legitimately has a sensor the size of what you would find in a cell phone. It's smaller than 1 inch, and it absolutely shows with the quality that you get out of that, and this camera is going to be far superior to that camera. Now, for anybody who's sitting there saying, well, Sony put out the last version, it was only $1,700. That was 9 years ago. We have inflation, and the inflationary numbers would be roughly $2,300 today. So it kind of falls in line with where it was 9 years ago. At the end of the day, this camera is for people who can afford it for one and just want to reach out and take pictures. Maybe it's the birds, maybe it's the kids, maybe it's the whales, maybe it's the elephants when you're on safari. That's up to you to find out. It's going to do a very good job. Just know what you're gonna get out of it. So thank you guys very much for watching. Jared, PolinFroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.